Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to PCM22 Dragons. This is episode number 20. We are transitioning between seasons and we're transitioning finally to Continental Pro, which is really exciting stuff. We're going to get a lot more racing in starting this year as we try to actually, build something within the database. But we're going to check in on a few things, beginning with our U23 Recruitment, which is actually at the end of the season we've just wrapped up. Let's look back at the riders that we had on the roster this past year, how much growth they have completed versus how much potential they have. And some of these guys will be retaining, others are moving on to new destinations, which for me is a good thing. I don't mind losing these guys to other teams, because if they were good enough to be on my roster in the first place, I would have already signed them. I wouldn't have put them in as youth riders. So having them in the youth ranks just means that we are keeping them alive in the database. And if they're moving on to a new team, then there is potential and hope that with a new team, they can help score those national points that are going to make the difference. But anyway, let's take a look at this one. So Aguilera, 3.5, 4, not much left. And he's a little bit of a classics guy, but mostly, empty stats there. Akhmetov has a long ways to go yet, but this is looking like a pretty decent rider. I mean, this is somebody who's almost good enough to have on the senior team. I will definitely look to re-sign him for the coming year. Cholanbot, 3.5, and he's already almost at his potential. He doesn't have much room for growth. I wouldn't have re-signed him, so good for him that he found a home with Giant Cycling Team, which is one of the Asian teams, by the way. Dadasova has some growth left in him and has already hit 4 stars and is heading to Leclerc. Kawabata, 5-star sprint potential. I would very happily hang on to this guy as he develops a bit more. He could be of use on the senior team, but Kawabata has gone to Victory Hiroshima. Ryan, 2.5, 4-star. Not much in that, but he's found a home with LX. Patsalides, 3.5, 4-star, and nearly at potential. May not find a re-signing unless I can't find better options out there, which is entirely possible. Shinde, solid potential still, and we'll definitely retain him. Swain is moving on to Leclerc. He's already at his potential, and 22 now anyway. And Yimin Wai, plenty of potential here as well. So there's definitely a few to hang on to, build with for our coming season. Strange thing is there's only 9 out of the 10 here, so I'm not even seeing who our 10th was and what has happened to them. Did they retire? Are they out of the database? Or did they sign with another team and maybe it's just that they simply aged out? Because there is a lack of a 22-year-old showing up on here. And when we were just looking at the roster a moment ago, there was a 22-year-old on there who was signing with another team. So that must be the case on that one. He is just too old to even show up on the retention list. Akhmetov, though, we're going to let him go. Really good to see. Nishiyama, 5-star potential, maybe. Really happy to bring this one in. We just got his base scouting done in the last week or two, so just far enough to get to that indication. We got a Filipino at 4.5 potential, and we've got a 2.5, 4 here as well. But none of these are locked in solid. But I'm still happy to have them potentially picked up and see if that is as good as they are potentially going to be. Another additional signing who would be a good all-around type prospect is Marwan Iqbal at Iqbal. We're hopefully going to be able to bring him in. There's been some evolution. Things have changed. We're seeing progress in the database, even though we didn't even reach Continental Pro yet. Was it just us? Was it a combination of riders? Well, let's try to dive a little deeper into it and see if we can find out. First off, Lutsenko, after winning the Tour de France, saw another popularity rise. So we started in Kazakhstan with a 5 training structure and 3 popularity. Now, the training structure is still a 5. It has not increased, but the popularity has gone from a 3 now up to a 7, which is going to lead to far more riders. That's a +4, all thanks to Lutsenko and his successes over the years within the database. his time is coming to an end, but he has really, really helped set us up. There's been a couple occasions where we might have had a tiny window on possibly be able to sign him, but we probably had a 1 or 2% chance of making that happen between his lack of interest, between the dossier cost, and between the financial cost of a contract with him. Bringing him down to our team would have been near impossible. But the good news is he's continually been on a team that's been competing at World Tour, and he's their leader, and he's the most popular rider there. And Lutsenko has had success. So, yeah, okay, we could have used him, sure. But how much good would he have done us rotting away in Continental, not competing in large races, where we're fighting to try to get back up to Continental, or to get to Continental Pro, and we're just now getting there, and he's about to retire. Probably made the right decision to not go for that 2% chance of signing him and letting the 98% guide me in that decision, because I really did want to bring him in. But it's been a much better scenario to have him helping guide the building of the database from a good source. Eventually we want to be that source, but we're not there yet. And so in the meantime, it's worked out really well. But we have 3. There's a key here. I'm going to read this entire message for you. Following countries have progressed their training structures: Malaysia, Japan, and Belgium. Two points of training structure in Asia for Malaysia. That now gives them a 3-4. That could get you some decent riders. A 3-4 can definitely get you some decent riders. For Japan, this is big, because Japan was a 2-8. A 3-8. 8 means there's a lot of Japanese riders coming into the database. But with a training structure of 2, they just weren't good. Bumping that up to a 3 is going to lead to some better riders. And if we can pluck those better riders out of that large field, we can start to see, I think Japan could be the hotbed of cycling before long in Asia, along with Kazakhstan, of course. China, I think we have a chance to eventually get there, but they have a popularity of 9, but they only have a training structure of 1. So finding that 1 or 2 riders good enough to start getting some wins and getting the super prestige necessary to start building that training structure, I think that's the third piece. Those are the 2 sleeping giants. But Japan had a little bit of a leg up starting on a training structure of 2, and now hitting 3. I think it can really start to blossom on us. Belgium also adding to their training structure, which is crazy because of how good it would have been to begin with. Reading the rest of the message here: riders who, at the end of the season, are well placed in the individual super prestige world rankings can allow the training structures of a country to progress. This in turn strengthens the quality of training and increases the chances of fostering young riders with great potential. I was starting to go back and forth on whether this was an individual or a national element, because there is a national ranking as well. It's the individual, and it's super prestige. So we don't have to be in World Tour to do it. We just have to score a lot of points. And I bet you anything that Yamamoto is the cause of the increase in Japan. Now, last year, with 7 wins, Yamamoto was 52nd. I believe this is Continental rankings here, not directly the super prestige, but I do remember that he had a pretty good super prestige ranking. And that win in the Japan Cup was a lot of points right at the end of the season, and higher level points, because those races that I was focusing on are the ones. So it wasn't necessarily about the individual race at this point. It was about the accumulation of points. And Yamamoto, with a multitude of victories, I mean, look how much higher he was up the rankings than he was the previous couple of years. Now, through search, I can look at Malaysia. I can see current contracts. I can see their attributes, but I could also see season rankings. But as it's January 1st, I don't know about last year's season rankings. This is the current season rankings. But I can go through rider by rider and look at career and see where they ranked. And out of everything, this is the highest ranked guy by far. It's not high. It's not that high at all. 117th in the Continental rankings. Maybe he's the one who's done enough. He's got a 78 sprint. He had 19 low-level Continental victories last season. I think that really is what has added up to be the points to make this one happen. So my assumption is Mohammed with Terengganu is the guy who has risen things for Malaysia. It looks like so far out of the 6 points that have built within the database in across all of Asia, I'm only responsible for one of those points. But we're entering Continental Pro this year. So there's a very, very good chance that I could be responsible going forward for the bulk of the points that are going to build throughout Asia. It's the moment of truth regarding the calendar. And I want to get us into every single World Tour race we can get into. And I think I can check every single box. And it's not going to make a big difference. I think we'll end up getting 2 additional races. If our sponsor picked one up for us, that can make a difference. So I've gone through, left no stone unturned. Every last World Tour race I have requested an invite to. But like I said, I only expect that we might get 2 of those out of the entire calendar because we have zero reputation at that level. We've never been in a race. We've never performed before. We've always been a continental team till this year and a relatively new one. So at least from the World Tour's perspective, they have no idea who we are. 4 teams request and they take 4 teams and we're the 4th team because nobody else requested. That is our best chance of getting in. But most of these we're going to get a no by tomorrow. A lot of them. But definitely the other thing I'm going to do this season is the HC races are higher profile. They are the next level below all the World Tour races. So they are worth more points in Super Prestige. Therefore, if we're going to raise training structures like we did with Yamamoto and the success he had last season, we need to do it through those means. So adding some HC races to the calendar this year intentionally, again, I don't know how many of those invites will succeed, but we're going to make a request on that throughout the season to try to fill out the calendar. But I've got to be careful on how many races we have, as we could very well end up murdering our rather small team through exhaustion. But at 21 riders, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. They should be able to handle up to 3 races at a time, just not continuously. January 1st look at the roster. Yamamoto, Alpasava are the top climbers, but we're so much deeper than before. I mean, all the way down to Brandon No at a 72. We're all within 5 points of each other, 4 points if you start at Islamov. That is major progress from where we were. And look how much deeper we are in the punchers category with the 70 pluses. Really only a few guys that are really, really poor on a quick hill. With the 78 being our best overall, it's not like we're fantastic or anything, but that's still 1 point better than we have in the mountains. Time trialing wise, not as big of a weakness as it was before with 4 guys on a 74 plus. Taraskin is getting there. He's fairly well balanced as well, but not yet at the higher levels, but he's making progress. He's finally hit 4 stars. He has progressed slowly. I think part of that was through our financial constraints. We had poor trainers who didn't have very good relations, and I often had the wrong trainer with guys out of necessity because it was that or nothing in terms of training. So I have had some guys that have had stunted development, and it tended to be the guys that were lower down. Taraskin is one of those. I think he should finally start to blossom this season, and we should see him grow a bit more rapidly. Classics are still a major problem as we only have 1 rider. Chu, I sort of had 3 before, but Chu has out-progressed the other 2, and the other 2 were among the expiring contracts last year. Lieberman at a 69 is the only support rider, and then you got Schechter and Yamamoto. We are very weak in that department, so don't expect any fireworks in classics. But in the sprint, we've got 3 very solid guys, and Schechter's at 80, 81 now, and he's very well-rounded. He's going to win a lot of races this year, so I'm hoping that could be a boost to Israel by next season. I mean, this could be the strongest Israeli rider in the world this year. Oscar, same Oscar as we know and don't love. He's not growing. He's not developing. He's 28. He's a filler because he is our second best rider on paper, but he's not. He's an empty bag of Baradur. Sprint wise though, Dai is growing into being a pretty solid, not there yet, but growing into being a better secondary option, especially when his stamina is 8 points better than Oscar already, better in resistance, better in recovery by a fair bit. He'll be taking over from Oscar before long as the primary lead out guy, but for now, there's your 2 lead out riders and your sprinter, and then it drops off from there. But really what matters after that is flat rating. So you've got Chu with a 75, you've got Lieberman with a 74, you get Terskin. Our lead out's getting better, but it's still weak. I mean, Schechter is the only one with a solid flat rating. That's something we're going to need to find in time, even if we bring in a proper Baradur who just has high flat rating to be an early lead out in a sprint. We might have to do that in the coming seasons. But as for stamina, ready, Alpasov, Schechter, Chu, and Hamad are the best. Resistance, plenty of guys in the 70 plus, and recovery. We're going to start getting into some longer races. Schechter, Lieberman are the best in recovery. Ready, Locke, and Dai are okay. Does fall off a bit. It's not something we're built towards, but there's positives out here. We've definitely seen some growth, and with a better calendar this year, we'll see how much more points we can accumulate for these guys, and if at some point we can build some popularity. But I don't know. Maybe that only comes from the World Tour races. Expectations for the year. National championships are still the primary targets. The demands go up when you hit Continental Pro. So winning all the national championship stuff, you still get bonuses for that, but not at the same scale as we would have gotten before. So it's not automatic that we're going to get 100%, but Continental Pro is still on the easier side. It's World Tour where they start making it a whole lot more challenging to achieve that super success level. This year's super success would take us from 113 up to 140k, and that sort of bonus is definitely the kind of territory that we would need to re-sign our top expiring contracts, which there are a couple of this year. But winning the points classification at the Tour of Guangxi seems to be the most important event of the year, but that's not until October. Therefore, there are no major sponsor events in the earlier portion of the year. It's almost all national championships. In fact, we have a top 5 at the Trofeo Playa de Palma, and the tweaking of the sponsor looks to be done correctly. I do have Chinese riders, I think, but not enough. We don't have any riders out of Hong Kong right now, but we do have Chu from China, and at least he's semi-popular, so they are decently satisfied with him, and I think he's going to do even more this year and build his popularity a fair bit. And overall, for some reason, Dai is our most popular rider. Well, no wonder they're not satisfied. I'm down to a single Chinese rider. Chu's the only one I have. That's the problem with a 1-9 training structure / popularity. There's a huge pool of riders, but with a training structure of 1, finding anybody besides Chu himself, he's a needle in a haystack. I'll keep hunting. I think we're going to be with this sponsor most likely for at least 3-4 years. So adding another Chinese rider or 2 and trying to find at least 1 rider out of Hong Kong will probably make up for the difference, so that we can easily get that super success and not have to focus on the objectives and just focus on the races that matter. And while we might only have 4 expiring contracts this year, all 4 guys are 4.5 stars or better. All 4 guys are 21, 22 years of age and have good potential or are already at a state that's pretty good. Brandon No might be one, that you'd be forgiven to let go. Dai as our improving and second sprinter, probably not going anywhere either. So I think we're going to want to hang on to these guys. We might need, especially with Schechter, we might need all of that extra income that's out there for next season. If I remember correctly, I was number 1 in the Continental rankings last season, and it's translated, even though we were not Continental Pro, it has translated into we are getting the bonus. We are getting the bonus. Intermarché Wanty Gobert is getting the World Tour races across the board. But we are getting priority on invitations for one-day races on the World Tour calendar. Now, that's good and bad. The punchy ones, the sprint ones, that's going to be good. We're going to get a number of invites. This is going to be massive for points hauls if we can get top 10s. I don't think we're going to be terribly competitive. We're going to be racing in a different manner than I would normally race because we're not going to be good enough to win those at all. But if we race to finish as high as we can and just don't go crazy and let's say, going all in on a bet when you're not good enough for that 1 in a million, instead of taking the 1 in a million, take the odds to get the highest finish that you can get and not worry about actually winning. You set that up right, we could get a string of top 10s. The one problem with getting the one-day races is that we're terrible on cobbles, and I requested invites to everything. So we're going to go out there and get blown out in those races. The others, a string of top 10s can equal a whole lot of super prestige points. So that's good. That's excellent, even. So reply by race organizers has already come in, and just like that, we have, with priority, we've picked up 5 one-day races, just like that. Omloop Eschborn Frankfurt, that's a sprint one. Dwarflanderen, we are in. We're going to get blown out there. But Rouge de Pan, Cadel Evans and Eschborn Frankfurt, we can absolutely get the top 10s in those. Excellent news. We've already been bumped out of UAE Tour, but we didn't get bumped out of the rest. So I expected 2 races. We've already gotten 5, and there's plenty of invites remaining out there. And in fact, only once have anybody already come back and said, "Oh, no, we're good, thanks. We're too elitist for you. You're out." Not wanting to get totally overwhelmed, I'm not going for every HC race on the calendar, but I am going for most of the one-day HC races on the calendar. Fatigue-wise, the legs, it's a lot easier to handle 6 one-day races and get the equivalent points out of those versus even 1 7-day San Juan International, where it's the same number of days that you're putting into the legs, or more so than what we would have been having, and only 1 set of points. Yes, success on an individual stage is going to amount to points, and then the overall, but on scale, it's significantly smaller on what we'd accumulate out of this one versus what we accumulate out of having, half a dozen one-day classics and finding success even in just a couple of them would still add up to more than what we would get out of San Juan. So that's the approach that I'm going to take right now, especially assuming that we are going to get a fair number of invites to World Tour races and already have picked up 5. This is incredible stuff. Here's what I was expecting all along. 7 invites requested. Those were all those 1 days that I was talking about, and not one of them heeded our request. So we got axed by all of them. That's the through March portion of the calendar. But at least we have this bonus for the World Tour ones. They're worth a lot more points anyway. Last season had 5 races that mattered on the calendar. So far this season, there's a lot of invites that are out there that we haven't heard back on. I don't expect to get a whole lot more of them, but there's bound to be a little bit. But for now, we have 14 HC or above races on the calendar. All the ones that we've done previously, the 6 or so of them, Langkawi, Norway, Denmark, we have Taihu Lake, Britain, and Japan Cup, right? All of those are back this year. But then, of course, the World Tour races that we just got invites to, and then a couple additional ones like ZLM Utah, Larry Miller Tour of Utah race has been added to our calendar. And one other World Tour race that is, I'm sure, a sponsor objective at the end of the calendar. It's not until October, and this is a perfect opportunity because most of the World Tour teams don't take it seriously at all, and they send young prospects to this one. It's a very weak lineup who are at the end of their year, and that's the Tour of Guangxi. 6 stages right at the end, and it's one punchy stage, and it's a short punchy stage. It's only 6 kilometers. So you perform there, you can keep a sprinter there alive. You could focus on the sprint stages and gain time, and then just don't lose anything on that particular day, and you could claim the overall. That's 2 things to focus on. Focus on doing well on that stage with anybody, everybody, but try to keep that sprinter alive for the finish. Then go and win some sprint stages. You could take the overall. So curious to see how we do with that one, as I think that's going to probably be our biggest race of the year, which is an odd one because it's one that I would simulate past every other season. Another set of notices, 5 more races. Amstel Gold, we are in, while Catalonia, we are out. Giro, not in there either. Milano Sanremo is a 1-day race, and so we are in, and the Tirreno Adriatico, out. But we are finding that we have a very good, almost perfect record of 1-day races, getting the invites, while not getting the stage races. Based on the size of our team, it's actually probably a really, really good thing that we finished where we did in Continental rankings last year and are getting these invites. This is going to be a heck of a season if we can get any sort of results anyway. Let's figure out exactly what it is we need to do to start scoring some points. Because the World Tour points don't matter. Continental points don't matter, except for so far as getting exactly what we've done, getting that ranking that offsets the other teams and allows us to place higher, allows us to earn additional invites to World Tour events, which score at a higher rate. But looking at our first race of the year, Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race, which is a World Tour Class B Classic, winning it is 220 super prestige points. I don't think we can realistically look at that right now as a way to be acquiring a lot of points. But if we can crack the top 10, we're looking at 40 to 60 points across that range. And you can see points go all the way down to 35th position. So there is something to be had about getting a number of riders up the list, at least just a little bit. The HC races score less, and these are the tours. 160 points to win. Continental points also provide well, and that is where I think we kind of came off in a good way. But you can still get 40 plus super prestige points for a top 10 finish, and they score all the way down to 30th place. The monuments score even better, with the top 10 getting you 60 plus points. Guangxi scores a little bit higher. Climber classification also comes in with a decent haul of points classification, and each stage is worth 10 points. No, here's the proper one. Classification on stage. I think that was each like intermediate sprint that you win or something along those lines. But here we are for the overall stage. Top 8 earn points, but specifically it's the podiums that are going to acquire a bit more. And you can see where the benefit of taking something like a Tour de France win is massive. 600 super prestige points for winning that one. 40 kilometers left here at the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. And it should be easy, straightforward sprint. And sprint is probably our strongest, well, it is. We are stronger in the sprint than we are in any other category. And with a lot of 1-day classics, that's going to suit our profile more or less from time to time this season. So it's going to be a good opportunity for us. And it's a good opportunity for us. Here's 2 or 3 problems. One, we have a much more loaded calendar, much more loaded schedule than we've ever had before. So I cannot just set up every single major race or every major race that I want to set up, pick the majority of them and abandon a few, but I can't just pick the major races and set them all as objectives and have everybody stacked for each of those races. There's too many races to do that. But I can still pick and choose some, so I can still prioritize some over others, and I've done that to an extent. But with 20k to go here, and we see a late break, a late attempt at a break from a few riders, but they're being chased and not even really getting separation here. And it's now 17k to go. The last thing, though, is the lead out group. Our flat ratings aren't that great. So even though I do have some capable sprint, the lead out group is still on the mediocre side. So setting these guys up, I have a number of +1s on the expected, and overall the net is a slight positive on the day. So we have lucked out a little bit on what we've drawn. In particular, Schechter at +3 gives him an 82, 83 in the sprint department, 81 in the flat, and 82 stamina. That's going to be competitive, and Dye with a +2 is going to provide a solid lead out. Oscar's -2 definitely is going to bump him out of the proper lead out role, and he's going to go a little bit earlier. In fact, I'm really rather convinced that he's not going to provide much at all, and that we might want to rely on somebody else like Taraskin, but that's okay. Not only has the tempo been high and our flat ratings are not great, and we're up against World Tour guys for the first time, well, not technically the first time, but a complete field of World Tour teams for the first time ever, as we're again trying to see a little bit of separation from these guys. But I don't want to be attacking too much on the climbs, because that's definitely not our strength, and that's going to hurt. But it's also a good way to actually get us out into that front position. Now with 12k to go, and Reddy's going to continue on a little bit longer because we've got ourselves nice and set up and good to go. And now that Reddy's done, we'll back off and let Chu go, and then also gel up for No. Taraskin, Reddy's done. 9k to go, one last hill. A little more downhill, it's going to make it go fast, but Brandon No is going to take over pretty soon as Chu is done. Right as we hit this next hill, No, go through a 94 on this one. Oscar, hang in there, Oscar, hang in there. No is done. Oscar is going to take over for a moment, and now Taraskin. 5k to go. This is what I was talking about, though. We are a little bit on the weaker side and not fully set for the race to come, so we're not going to get as good of a lead out as we would otherwise. But there's your nature of the beast when we are a weaker Continental Pro team. And Dye takes over at 2.2k, and he's going to start his sprint at 1.8. Got the right-hander here. We are about 10th position, but we are getting a good lead out from Dye that sets up Schechter here with 700 meters. A little bit of undulation to get up and over, and then it descends. But there are 7 guys out in front. Can Schechter improve his position? Can he finish above 8th? Right now he sits 9th behind Dye, but he's going to get ahead of him. He's got ahead of 3 guys, 4 guys, 5 guys, 6 guys. Can he crack the podium? Nordfort, Bittner, Schechter gets 3rd. That's a good result. That is a good result for us. He had a little bit more. I could have started his sprint a little sooner, but I was worried about the undulation at the end there. I wanted to have enough in the tank. Like I said, my intention this season is not to go all in, roll the dice constantly. We want the accumulation of points, which means you need good results. So attacking early before the finish and cracking, like going all in for the win, cracking and end up finishing 18th because you get overtaken by a swarm of riders, versus patiently competing and getting a lot of top 10s or top 5s. I'm going to opt for the top 10s and top 5s a lot more this season, because we don't quite have the team that's strong enough to get too many wins. Schechter, I think he is going to get some wins, but our very first World Tour race that we've ever participated in, we've got a guy standing on the podium, and that's a hell of a result. That's a good start. That single day of racing and that podium already has us 11th behind only Israel Premier Tech, which of course that's a good thing if they are succeeding here early on in the season, as they are they're very much like us. And Astana is back in World Tour and 12th so far. And UAE just doesn't count because they don't have any Asian riders. Continental were non-existent as there's only been one race so far, and I did not participate in it directly, but we are top 20 in the Super Prestige as is, and that's going to be the big push. This season, Scheckter is definitely the focus. Yamamoto, we've already seen gains. He's already boosted Japan's profile. We'll see if we can do a little bit more and boost it again, but I do think that this is the year of the sprint for our team. Scheckter picked up 105 points on that one. That is going to do it for this episode, though. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.